Greetings from the campus of Louisiana State University, Eunice. I wanted to spend a few moments going over the requirements for grading for the crime scene report. So you're going to find it very handy to have a printout of the evaluation criteria for that assignment, which is in Module 2 in my courses. It's the page, I'll show it to you. It has the icon with the little detective snoop. If you don't have that printed out and handy, press the pause button on the video and go get the handout because you're going to need it. This handout gives you a framework, or explains to you the framework actually that I use when I grade your paper. You'll notice as you look at the evaluation criteria, there are 5 different categories that are going to be rated or evaluated on your paper. Each of the 5 criteria is going to be rated as exemplary, which gets 3 points, as satisfactory, which is worth 2 points, needs improvement, which is worth 1 point, and unacceptable, which is worth 0 points. You'll also notice in the fine red print at the bottom of the page, a rating of 0 for criteria 1, 2, 3, or 5 will automatically result in a failing grade for the assignment, even though some of the other criteria may have more acceptable ratings. So keep that in mind. And down at the bottom of that page, you'll see the 0 through 15 scale that correlates the different ratings totals to the grade possibilities. It's a system that works fairly well, and you're going to have a rubric like this for each of the 4 assignments that you do during the course of the semester. Let's look at the 5 criteria specifically for this assignment. The first one, the writer will show evidence of conscientious writing and rewriting, posting drafts in progress that show refinement and improvement from draft to draft, resulting in a strong final draft of the assignment. That criteria is satisfied in the Look What I Wrote posting form. You notice there's a deadline date for posting a complete final draft, and there are specifications in the form on the page where you log into the form, which tells you the quantity, the number of posts that you should have to earn a satisfactory grade. Your posts must be spread out over the module period. You have to post by the deadline for the rough draft, and then the intervening time between the time the rough draft is due and the final draft is due, you should be posting, not necessarily every day, but you should be checking into the forum, reading others' drafts, posting drafts of your own routinely during the week. Students that post the most, by the way, earn the highest grades. So there is an incentive to your participation in the forums. Also keep in mind that posts, I make an attempt to explain that in the instructions to the forum in the introduction. Just because you post a post doesn't mean you get automatic credit for doing something good. For a post to count, it must, if it's a response to one of classmates' papers, it must be specific, it must provide specific help and instruction for your peer. It must point out specific qualities of their paper or specific areas of their paper where they could either improve or perhaps it might be an area that you want to commend. But at any rate, be detailed, be specific in your responses. Post unto others as you would have them post unto you. That's a good rule of thumb in this process. Okay, the second criteria, the report should show an organizational plan, and I'm not going to read the rest of that to you, but it divides the assignment into pieces. And the 2 examples that I have in Module 2 give you excellent templates or models of how to do your own. There's not one set way of doing it. The 2 different examples that you look at both are arranged a little bit differently. But the important thing is to have that timeline, an initial summary, an initial notification, and then of course the detailed description of the crime scene, which is the meat and potatoes of the report. Criteria 3 for your rating, you're going to be rated on the adequate length. The length of this paper comes from details, vivid and exact details of objective description that are consistent with the facts in the story. That's very important. It'll hurt your grade on the paper if your report shows details or indicates evidence that a close reading of the story suggests would never be there. So make sure that you read the story carefully. Make sure that your evidence collected and that everything that you discover is consistent with the clues that you find in the story. fourth criteria, very important for this assignment, the tone. This is a professional report. It's written for a professional audience, and it must be factual, it must be utterly objective, and it must be free of subjective bias. Don't draw any conclusions. Remember, as the CSI guy, it's not your job to figure out who done it. It's your job simply to describe the scene in considerable detail, to collect evidence, and to catalog that evidence so that the people who put the case together will have information. But don't draw any conclusions about what happened, and don't use language in the report that is emotional or could be inflammatory or suggest some type of bias, or that you jump to a conclusion that you, as the CSI, are not entitled to draw. Remember, the conclusions are for the detectives and the district attorney's office folks. Your job is simply to examine, inspect, and collect. Okay, the fifth criteria deals with freedom from reader distracting errors in grammar, usage, and mechanics, and sentence formation. Since this is a technical writing, you're not going to be held to the same standards for sentence completeness and paragraphing and stuff like that as you would for an essay. It's not an essay, it's a report. And you are allowed to use abbreviations. There are places in this report where a bulleted list will be very appropriate to use. But if your report is filled with errors in spelling, misspelled words, the narrative section, if it has really clunky, hard to understand sentences that result in bad grammar, any usage error that results in a lack of clarity is going to affect your rating for number 5. For the remaining assignments of the semester, criteria 1 and criteria 5 never change. They're the same for every assignment. Criteria 2, 3, and 4 will vary according to the qualifications and the specifications of that individual assignment. Okay, that covers the evaluation criteria. After you turn your paper in, you're going to get a report back from me in my courses that's going to list the 5 criteria and our 3210 rating for each of those 5 criteria. It's going to total up, and it's going to explain where your grade comes from. And of course, I'll also provide additional comments and feedback. I don't mark on your papers. You won't see any marks on the papers. I never print your paper out, actually. I read it on the screen. I make notes as I read it, and in my feedback to you, I'll give you some general comments and then those 5 ratings, but I won't make specific marks. If you are on campus and you're in this class, anytime you'd like to see me in the office, I have an open door policy. I'm an administrator, so for better or for worse, I'm here every Monday through Wednesday, 8 to 4:30, except when I travel for off-campus business, but you're welcome to drop in anytime. Okay, that's the criteria for evaluation. The writing is yours. I'll see you in the Look What I Wrote forum for Module 2.